everyone. I am so excited to have you guys here for yet another awesome episode. So, before we begin today's episode, I want to say something to every autism mom listening, especially the ones who lie awake at night wondering what their child is thinking, what they wish they could say, and whether one day they will ever hear them. For many of us, communication feels like the deepest ache in this journey. Not because we want our children to be somebody they're not, but because we long to know them. We want to hear their thoughts, to share a moment where our words meet theirs. Many autism moms quietly carry this dream, and this dream of just having a conversation with their child, a real back and forth, a moment where they can finally say, "Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me who you are. Are you even in there?" So today's guest lived that dream. Betsy Hicks-Russ first truly heard her son, Joe, when he was 30 years old. 30. Can you imagine that? She never gave up. And I, for one, can't even imagine what she experienced when she had that moment. Like, after decades of just pure silence, she was suddenly able to communicate with her son in ways that she had always hoped for, but never fully imagined. And so I'm recording this intro after I've already had my conversation with Betsy, and there's so many. I promise you, there are so many aha moments that I really don't want to spoil it for you. So I want you to just sit back and really enjoy this. It's the longest one I've done so far, but there are enormous emotions over here. Enormous. And this is not just for Betsy, for each one of us listening. This conversation is not just a story. It's a doorway into possibility, hope, a reminder that communication may not always look the way the world expects, but that connection, understanding, and deep communication may be far closer than we think. So if you're a mom who has ever wondered whether your child understands more than they can say, this episode is for you. Hi, I'm Farah Danish. Welcome to my Calm Autism Mom podcast. I'm a certified brain gym movement facilitator, former special educator, and a mindset coach. Through my podcast, I bring together parents, experts from educational, psychology, and medical communities to share innovative insights on parenting and supporting individuals on the spectrum. My mission is simple: to continuously learn and share the latest autism-related news and strategies, bringing you powerful conversations and practical solutions you can use right now. So, if you're an autism mom searching for answers, support, or just some real inspiration, you're in exactly the right place, my friend. Let's transform your autism parenting journey starting right now. Today, I'm joined by someone whose voice has become a powerful force of hope and advocacy in the autism community, Betsy Hicks-Russ. With more than 200,000 followers across social media, Betsy has built a global community rooted in one powerful idea: presuming competence. She is the co-host of the Telepathy Tapes, Now What?, on YouTube, and the host of the Presume Competence series on the Autism Odyssey podcast, where she brings together leading voices to challenge outdated therapies, unpack the realities of apraxia, and question the science that has shaped how the world sees non-speakers. But Betsy's work goes way deeper than advocacy. Her conversations invite us to rethink communication itself, to expand how we understand connection, consciousness, and the hidden abilities of children the world has underestimated. She is also the director of Autism Odyssey and the visionary behind the Be Kind Best movement. But above all these titles, Betsy is a mother. Her son Joe is the heartbeat of everything she does. Her step forward in her work is guided by devotion to him and deep compassion for caregivers walking this same path. And today we're going to talk about the moment that changed everything, the moment Betsy finally heard her son, I'm so excited for you to hear this because this episode will challenge assumptions, open possibilities, and maybe, just maybe, even change the way you see your own child. So let's begin.
Hi, Betsy. I'm so thrilled to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Farah. It's a pleasure to be here, truly.
Betsy, my listeners are mainly autism moms who are going to really love this episode. And that's mainly because I get DMs and messages around speech and communication. And that is, as a former special educator, and I've done my ABA, I've done Sunrise, I've done a bit of every kind of intervention. That's a very difficult question for me to answer. That is my child ever going to speak? But I have always felt that there is a way to communicate with our children, which should be more important than actually listening to speech. So I get moms telling me because there's no language, there are behavioral problems. Because there is no communication, there's a problem to access education. Because of lack of communication, I can't bond with my child. And that's the main one. And they feel they're really missing out on that mother-child relationship. And I saw plenty of that on your Instagram feed, and I loved it. I loved it. And I love how I don't want to talk so much about it. I really want you to walk us through that journey. But before you do that, can you please tell us about Joey, your son? And let's start from there.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot of questions in the sense that it's what's interesting about what you had spoken about is that every answer I could give to what you talked about is an opening to an entire podcast all on its own. I mean, presuming competence, story with Joey, communication, does speech matter? All of these things are 1 hour discussions all on their own.
I'm
So
sure.
to consense this, to make this as condensed in the most possible way, I'll just briefly tell you my story. So Joey is 32 years old. We did not uncover spelling till he was close to being 30. Shortly after his 30th birthday, he had his first open communication. Um, I went through 30 years of his life not believing he understood anything, very little, very,
30
very
years.
little, 30 years, feeling if it hasn't, the favorite quote, if it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to happen. All of those ideas and also truly believing that I knew what was best. Truly believing that, well, I've worked in this industry. I'm a veteran mom. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
No one has anything to teach me. Very, very cocky.
But I think we've all been there. We
So
all are there in some
I've
way.
been exceptionally humbled in the past couple of years since I have discovered the spelling world with my son. And the one thing I want to mention is for anybody considering spelling, and Joe, who is now communicating with me through a letterboard, tells me again and again when I ask him what I should talk to everyone about, like what are the messages that you want to get out there? And he tells me over and over again, you have to tell them not to give up because so many people give up. So let's go backwards then. Now that I've told you that, like that's what we're going to drive for. Okay.
My God.
Now let me give you the backstory to that. So
And you, sorry to cut you there, but you have to explain what spelling is. What is this tool about?
absolutely,
A lot of people
I will
don't
do that.
know. Yeah.
So after years of speech therapy, AAC devices, went through them all. I mean, just a huge amount of therapy. We had enough resources to give him a really good upbringing in a good school and such, and nothing in the communication part ever came about.
No.
I had really resigned to the fact Joe is, as they like to say, severe or profound, that whole thing, which is not words I even use anymore. But the thing that kind of came up constantly with me is he is not regulated enough to sit to do any sort of a therapy. So spelling is a method that has evolved over the last decades, going from Soma at the very beginning to where we are now with all kinds of new programs starting to develop. And it is the understanding that communication is not hindered because of the lack of the oral or speech apraxia. Speech apraxia is just about not being able to move the
Yes.
body, move the mouth in the way that is necessary for words to form. What our kids are dealing with is whole body apraxia. And whole body apraxia means that everything is affected. Their entire body is affected in being able to do what they want it to do. So we think it's just speech, when in fact, every part of their motor capacity is something that has to be worked on and managed, and essentially, I don't like the word trained, but almost in a entrainment way, to be able to perform in the way that will help any form of communication. The problem is assessments, past history, really outdated systems tell us that in order to test for somebody's intelligence, they have to point to this. They have to say this. They have to be able to sit at a table and do this.
Yeah.
All of those things are the measures of intelligence.
Yes.
When in fact, if somebody has full body apraxia, which our kids do, they can't do that. And the pressure of having to do that makes it even harder. And so they're deemed as not being intelligent, even though they fully understand everything that is happening, but they just don't have the means to be able to express it.
Now, on that note, Betsy, I want to ask you, how did you notice this with Joey? Like the whole body apraxia. How
I
can
didn't.
you what?
I
You
didn't notice it. I
Okay.
didn't notice that was the problem. I didn't understand that was the problem. All of my expert friends never knew that that was the problem, so I didn't know. And it was a matter of being in the right place, a lot of really good circumstances happening that allowed us to do a spelling program, of which he fell asleep for probably the first 20 sessions, where he would have meltdowns, where he would only attend for like 5 minutes at a time, where he would hit his head, where he would act like he has no idea what the heck is going on. And somehow I had the drive to keep going. And I still don't know what did it to this day, but I kept going. And it finally became consistent about when he turned 30. And when that happened, I started seeing small amounts of like, I think he is in there. I think he does understand this lesson, because when you learn spelling, and let me explain again what spelling is. So spelling is a very basic letter board, all the letters on there, and basically they point to each letter to spell out what it is they want to do. Now, when they start on 3-letter boards. So it's like A through G. And then, so it's shorter. And because you're basically teaching, right.
Well,
Exactly. You're teaching an age appropriate lesson, and then you're asking questions with a known answer so you can help coach the motor of them touching letter by letter. And
what do
so
you mean when you say known answer?
So in other words, it's not an open-ended question. So if you were to say, "Oh, today you were a guest on what podcast?" And who was the person who hosted the podcast? So then I would take out the board that has the F on it, put that in front of him, and he would do the F, and then we would go to the A, and then we would take out the other letter board that has the R on it, and because he would know that that's how to spell it. And that's how it starts off. It's a very systematic. It is never, ever, ever, ever. And don't let anybody ever convince you that this is the way it should be, that you should just buy a letter board and say, okay, start spelling. It's not about that. It's about learning a actual unfolding of the program so that they get that myelination to be able to letter by letter move the finger to whatever the letter is. to be able to do
It's
that.
also good for them, for their eye movement, isn't it?
So the eye movement is a big part of the apraxia part too. It's part of
Yeah.
what doesn't, cooperate. And Joe has binocular vision. His eyes go in two different directions. He has to close one eye quite often.
Yeah.
And that adds to it, which is a big part of the reason he could never do AAC devices, because the backlight of that just made it all the more harder. The
Yeah.
simpler the letterboard is, the easier it was for Joe. And in Joe's situation, he has a textured board, so he can actually feel the letter, which makes it easier for him as well. And so that's a process that goes on for a year. And like I said, there was dysregulation at every appointment. He was struggling. He didn't seem to like it, but I kept going. And after about a solid year of just working it, he had his first what they call open communication, which is he gave an answer that was not a it wasn't it was an open-ended question.
Okay. So what did you ask him?
So the question was part of a regular lesson, and the lesson was on deserts. And she showed a picture of the desert at night.
Okay.
And on the desert, or on the picture was a lot of white. And so the teacher asked him, "That's so strange. It's white. So it looks like snow. So, but it's the desert. So what do you think, Joe? Do you think that's white sand, or do you think that is snow?" And he spelled, "It's salt." And our mouths dropped and we're like, "Oh my gosh, it is." That day changed everything. That day made me realize he 100% knows what's happening. He knows way more than I expected. And then lesson by lesson, every lesson became the most exciting hour of my entire life. And the better he got, the more excited he got to go. And so he went from attending for like 15 minutes to attending to the entire 50-minute session. And it became the highlight, and it still is the highlight of my week.
I almost feel like I was there with you. Oh my God, I'm getting all teary-eyed already because I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And if you can revisit that and just tell us, Betsy, what was that like emotionally for you to see that happen in
It's
front of you?
it's eh, uh, in a lot of areas, and I know we're going to be talking a little bit more about other things in my life right now, like telepathy and things such as that. But as a lot of areas of my life in this last couple of years, I feel like there's this metal cabinet in my brain that doesn't know where to file anything. Like
Right now.
it's so foreign to me that I just don't even know where to put it. And it's one of those things where you can even shout it out to people in the next room and they don't fully grasp it. So you just start keeping it to yourself because people just don't get it or they don't believe you.
Yeah.
And so I would like to say that it was like the happiest moment of my life, but it was more confusion. It was more, wait a second, what's going on here? What does this mean to my life? What does this mean to his life? What about all the crappy things I've done and said in the past?
Yeah,
Like,
that's the first thing that would hit me.
and so it becomes grief and happiness and joy and sadness and despair, and it becomes it all like rolled up into
A
one.
lot to process.
Yeah, it's a lot. Still is.
It still is.
That's
I can imagine.
that's why I do podcasts. That's why I have a podcast. 'Cause I figure if I interview enough people, I'll eventually figure it out. So,
So how was that for the rest of the family to take in?
they didn't believe it at first. They had to see it. Most people do have to see it to really be able to understand it. My daughter Jessie talks about it the best. She's like, it's one thing to hear he spelled something. It's another thing to sit in the room and to see him painstakingly go letter to letter to letter to really comprehend just how powerful it is for him and how powerful his desire is to get that message across.
And, now that you say this, I remember I want to share this little incident that I
Yeah.
had with my own son. And this is when I think around the time COVID hit, things got difficult for everyone, right?
Right.
There was a time, and special ed is really expensive if it's not funded by the government, which it isn't in most Asian countries. And we were in Malaysia, and I remember we were talking, it's just my husband and I, we took Suleiman, my son, to a center. We got him assessed. They're like, yeah, we can take him. And I'm like, how much is it? What's the fee and everything like? We didn't clearly do our research enough. And they don't share that information so openly on their website either. And when they dropped the fee on us, the price on us, we're like, oh, we may not be able to afford this. And we were talking about this in the car. Obviously, the assumption is that he doesn't get it, what we're talking
Right.
about. But we decided between each other that we can't afford it at this stage right now. We'll just make it work at home, but I don't think he can go back to school.
Right.
He obviously understood that, because I remember when I walked into his room, he was packing his bag. He was putting it away, that I won't need
Oh.
it anymore. I was,
Oh.
I'm like, no,
Right.
must be just a even at that time, I had
Yeah.
that little cabinet that no, it's not what I think it is. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
And now the more I hear moms like you coming out, and thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you're doing what you do, Betsy. The more you talk about this, the more it makes me revisit those times. And I'm like, my God, he was communicating all those times.
Yeah.
I
And
just,
they do. They understand it all. And it's this. I feel that educators who stand behind poorly done science, which is what they're standing behind of spelling is not reliable. It's and I that's again, that's a whole episode in its own. And if you want to hear more about the way that they try to block spelling and the sadness of how they try to call it FC and how it's been disproven, and it hasn't. But they stand behind these old signs. But I keep thinking about the revolution's happened. It's already changed, and it's exponentially changing. I mean, it's happening very quickly. More and more individuals are starting to understand this. It's getting to a point almost that those who refuse to grasp it from the educational standpoint or the SLP, the speech therapy standpoint, or ASHA, it's almost getting criminal to a sense of the fact that they are so against it to help protect their industry rather than to help these individuals is very, very shaking to me. And I don't want to get into this too much because I really don't. Let's talk about happy things today.
yeah,
But let's
exactly.
just say if you've heard negative things about it, just remember that there's a very big business, millions upon millions of dollars that is trying to lobby to keep this information from getting out there. But the beauty of it is us parents are not backing down, and we're going to stay out there, and we're going to keep educating, and and Joey is not going to stop, communicating and giving us advice as well too. So it's all going to come around, but now the discussion of this is the most cutting edge autism discussion that there is right now. And um it's a very exciting time to be alive. That's how I feel.
It is. It definitely is. Now, I just want to backtrack a bit. We spoke
Yeah.
a lot about assuming competence. There is a lot of confusion around what that is, because I still feel parents, when they say assume competence, assume,
It's presume competence.
is it? Okay. See, there you
Presume
go.
competence. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I hear a lot of assume competence from
Right.
ABA therapists.
And that's
And
fine. I mean, you could
as
say it
long
either
as,
way.
yeah, you're, challenging the child, I get that. But then what I see is I'm still seeing 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds doing not age appropriate work, but work, if you know what I mean. We're
Yeah.
still, I've been that mom. I've done that as well, where I'm like, okay, just because he's not communicating, I'm going to give him second grade work.
Right.
He's about 15 years old. He's 14 years old, but that child, I'll just give him first grade and second grade work, because that's easy for him to do. He's not going to, have a meltdown. I'm not going to have behavioral problems, because I was running a center, and I don't want to be managing behaviors. So what is your definition of presuming competence? How would you define that?
Okay, well, first I wouldn't call them behaviors in the sense of they're doing something because they're I mean, okay, we have regulation, and that's and but trying to keep themselves afloat in order to stay regulated is not a behavior, a bad behavior. I mean, they're just grasping to stay regulated in their
Survive.
very dysregulated body. So
Yeah.
to say that that is a behavior isn't really fair. It's like saying, "Oh, somebody just died in your house. They're crying. That's a behavior." Like, I mean, is it a behavior or is it a normal reaction?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's normal for
so
them.
that's been part of the problem, is that everything's been labeled as behaviors. The other piece of it is, just imagine the infuriation that you would have to go through every single day if you understood everything in intricate math and could write beautiful, prose and all different types of things, and knows so many different things about the world, knows different languages, and you were asked to do first grade work when you are brilliant. Now,
Yeah.
I personally, if somebody did that to me all the time, I would act out, but not in this behavioral way, but it is a way to try to communicate. It's not a behavior, it's a communication, really, is what it is it's a way
Yeah.
of saying, no, I this is
Beneath
pointless to
me.
me.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And you and that so presuming competence is the understanding that they always have and do understand everything that's coming in. And they have this insane amount of capacity for gathering information. So one of my favorite, I just did an interview with Maria Welsh, who's a SLP out of Chicago. One of my favorite things she says is at any given therapy session, I am always the least intelligent person in that room,
Wow.
because these individuals are so incredibly brilliant and they've been pulling in information all the time, all these years, pulling it, listening to it, holding on to it, filing it away. And they have such a filing cabinet of brilliance within them. And they've been understanding. And so people will say, well, how does he know that if he was never taught that? It's like, do you remember when you were taught that? Do you remember the moment you were taught that there are, you know, 9 or now 8 planets, whatever whatever we're
Really?
down to.
Yeah.
Do you remember the moment that you were taught that? No, of course not, because it's part. Maybe you did hear it in school, maybe you heard it on television, maybe you heard your parents talking about it, maybe you heard your sibling talking about it. It's like
Picked it up
we
from somewhere.
assume that every single thing that was ever taught to us was taught to us in school.
I
And
know. Oh my
probably
God. Yeah.
that's most of the time. I don't know about you, but I wasn't paying attention. I was paying way more attention to television than I was what I was paying attention to in
I
school.
agree. And I always argue that in this day and age, I mean, we can't say this about the past, but in this day and age with, information overload from
Right.
every single place you turn to, the information, how does somebody, like in the school system specifically, how does somebody decide that a sixth grader should only know this much?
Yeah.
Sixth grade level, seventh grade level.
Right.
Like, how is that even relevant, that way of learning? So and again,
Yeah.
that's a whole separate conversation.
It totally.
So
Yeah.
if you were to explain this concept to another mom, that, to challenge your child, how would you break this down to her? How would you tell her that?
Well, the part where I understand the challenge is really understanding how to help our children feel comfortable in their body, because that's
Mm.
the primary goal.
Mhm.
Because if they can feel comfortable and regulated, then everything else can start developing much easier. So this is not a situation of like, oh, the answer is simply, letter boards, and that's going to be the beginning and end of it. There's so much more involved. There's purposeful motor movement. There's all the occupational therapy pieces,
Mm.
which are so incredibly important. There's vision issues. They even focus on a board or any sort of device? Then there is nervous system issues, and what's going on in their body, all the biomedical things that might be an issue with. And there are a lot of biomedical things. And one of my biggest and always will be is diet. I'm a very, very big preacher of if you want to help support the autism body in the best possible way, you have to pay attention to the diet. And there are ways around the picky eating portion of it, or the RFID as they like to call it now. Like
Yeah.
there are ways around, but they don't really give real solutions because they make it all about behavior and they make it all about texture. And it's so much more than that. It's the gut biome. It's also just this inability. One of my favorite stories with that is my friend Natalia's sister Nina spells to her, I want to eat healthy, but I need you to coach my body to do that. So let's practice eating small bites of vegetables and help coach me. So it's actually something that they don't want to keep eating the same bag of chips over and over again. It's
Oh.
just what their body is comfortable doing. And that gets into that interoception, which is the body's inability to give it what it really needs at a time that it needs it.
Mm.
And instead it puts the body into crisis mode. So for example, my son Joe um has like no has really poor motor planning when it comes to drinking water. Okay, he only drinks water, but he's not, even if he's thirsty, he typically doesn't go through the motor planning actions of getting himself something to drink. So he just gets more and more dehydrated through the day until he has a really bad headache at the end of the day. And then we realize what's happened. Until I really understood interoception, that's when I really understood that he just wasn't being able to motor plan himself through it. So that 5, 6, 7 times a day, we needed to hand him a glass of water and he would drink it
Okay.
and he'll drink it, but
Mm.
to help coach him through that.
Yeah. How do you coach? I mean, I don't know if you've done. I would imagine you have because I've seen it in one of your posts. How do you teach children through, or how have you particularly taught Joe to express his feelings? Because that's a very difficult thing to teach. Like how were you able to do that? Because first he'd have to recognize that, okay, I am not feeling good, and a lot of kids don't want to accept that I'm not in a good space, but you need to do that to be able to then say, okay, this is what I need to do to get out of whatever I'm experiencing now. How did you do that?
I think if a lot of kids say that they don't want to say that they don't feel good, you have to consider a couple things. Unreliable speech. What have they practiced? I mean, they've been conditioned to say, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine."
Yeah,
And then you're like, "Oh, see, they're fine." It's like, well, are they
that's
fine?
the
Or
right
were
answer.
they just conditioned for a lot of years through ABA to say, "I'm fine. How are you?"
Yes.
So they learned very early on to not rock the boat with too much speech because then more questions were going to come. So there's something to consider with that as well too.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other part is that I believe strongly that because of diet and this is not just kids with autism, this is all of us. I believe that there's a lot of people who don't even know what good feels like. That if they've been raised on a really bad standard American diet,
Yes.
that they've never necessarily felt great, and that
Yes.
there's a lot of toxicity in our food that makes our nervous system dysregulated, and they don't know what good can feel like. So there's that part of it as well. But I mean, I've got Joe now able to tell me when his stomach hurts, and I come up with solutions because if you say to him, Joe, do you want to the unreliable speech with Joe, he doesn't have a lot of words, but he'll say yes to just about anything.
It's
And
easier to say yes and move on.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the letter, but when we pull the letter board out, it'll be a totally different story. And he'll say, like, yeah, my stomach hurts. And I give him solutions. Like, should we try this? Should we try this? Should we try this? And then he comes up with his own solutions.
When you think about it, Betsy, even for us, we have this term called keyboard warriors. A lot of times there are things that you can't say upfront, face to face, but we find it easier to WhatsApp that across or sending it on email. And sometimes I get the feeling that it's probably the same with kids, on
That's a great analogy.
it
Honestly.
is,
Yeah.
right? It's easier to
It's like,
just
let's just
type
give the
it out.
fast, easy answer and move on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really interested in what does a teaching session look like with Joey? Like, how do you
Well, I
prepare
work with him now too. So both his
Yeah.
practitioners. So I've gotten good enough to now where I can spell with him very comfortably. So I usually, when you do any sort of a program, so anytime you're going to go into the spelling world, you need to work with a reliable, tested and true program. And there's not that many out there to choose from. So it's not that hard to do. So the most popular ones are RPM. RPM is one though that you as a parent need to be very active in. It's and you need to get well trained in it for that as well. Practitioner wise, the most common ones are S2C, which is spelling to communicate, and the speller's method. And those are the two most common ones right now. There's a new one coming out called the Bridge that'll be here soon. But those are methods that are pretty much what's so good about those methods is they're replicable in the sense that it's not just one person learning it. It's a way of teaching that multiple people can learn at the same time. And so there's a lot of coaches now getting certified. It's going on everywhere. It's really fabulous. And so a typical session, it depends. But I'll tell you what Joe's session is. I mean, with Joe, I'll typically do a program, a lesson plan. There's a bunch of them online. And there's a one I just found recently that is free. It's called Spell Me About It. .com. I think Spell Me About It. It might be .com or .org. I'm not sure. I think it's .com. Spell Me About It. That will show you what a typical lesson looks like. And then you have a lesson and then you read the lesson and then they go ahead and they do the letters. That's just a good way to get warmed up at the very, very beginning. Now, Joe doesn't do as much of that anymore because he likes to have more of an open-ended session. So now he pretty much every session when I go to see his practitioner, I have a list of questions. And you would say, well, Betsy, if you have a list of questions and you spell with him, why don't you answer the questions with him at home? There's a couple reasons. One is that he spells way, way better with his practitioner because it is very hard to be a communication partner. Why is it hard? Because there's no space bar. There is like letter after letter. And did they make a mistake or have they moved on to another word or are they, so there's a lot of wordsmithery involved with trying to figure out where is this going? And a good practitioner is phenomenal at that and can pick up the patterns. For example, Joe will hit the T often when he means to hit done. And to know that he's hitting the T, he's not starting another word. He's really trying to hit done. And sometimes they get in loops where they repeat the same letters over and over again. They get stuck on the same letter. You have to, that's why they lift the board and put the board back. It's to reset the eyes, get out of that loop and now start again to get rid of the loop.
Okay.
So with Joe, now, so I was saying that there's a couple of reasons why the practitioner, the other thing is, and I'm sure we're going to hit this eventually, is the telepathy piece. Joe and I telepathically are extremely connected. So if when people say, oh, spelling's not reliable because it can be influenced, of course, they're not willing to also accept the fact that telepathy is real, which is a whole other story, but it can be influenced. But anything can be influenced. Speech can be influenced also.
Exactly.
Like AACs are tremendously influenced because you're actually pre-programming the answers. So anything can be.
Oh my God, yes.
But telepathy can be influenced. And he and I are so connected in my brain that if he gives me an answer and it's a really vital answer, like something that's really important, I will double check it with another communication partner to verify that it wasn't just me that he was picking up on, or he wasn't just telling me what I needed to hear. We check in with somebody else.
So talk to me about telepathy. Like how did that journey start? Like, and I believe you started a podcast show, or you're co-hosting. Tell me about that.
Okay. So I'll try to tell this as sequentially as I can. So, Joe had only been an open speller a matter of a very short period of time when the telepathy tapes came out.
Okay.
And I was still trying to grapple with presuming competence and the fact that my son,
You're like,
is a speller.
holy
I'm
God.
just trying to deal with this. And Joe and I are like driving down the road, and I'm listening to the 4th episode. My friend Libby, who wasn't my friend at the time, I'm hearing Libby talk about something and Katie Asher talk about something. And I'm just like, you know, um, I just got to know. And I literally pulled over the car and I pulled out the letter board and I said, Joe, I'm thinking of a 4-digit number. What's the number? And he did it with perfection. And
You
as
what?
I just sat there and I'm like, all right, can I tell people about this? Like I told my partner about this. I told my kids. Everyone's just like, mom. Yeah.
Just
Okay.
random 4 digits.
4 digits. And he knew exactly what they were. So I honestly didn't do a lot for a while. I was just too afraid to talk about it. And the one thing to also mention is the spellers programs don't like to talk about it either. So it wasn't something I could really go to my practitioner about. And they feel, at least they've been told, that it is going to deeply skew their research if we start talking about telepathy.
Yeah.
Although it shouldn't. And it actually is more of an explanation for why the research has to go the way it does than it is a skew. So now I'm understanding that fully. But it was like there was nobody to talk to about it. So strangely, but of course, the beautiful powers of the universe, then the same day I got a message from Katie Asher, who was, and her son Houston were heavily featured in season 1, saying, have you listened to the telepathy tapes? Because she just was watching my content, and as Joey is a speller. And I said, I can't believe you sent me this message just today. I kind of figured this out, that he can do this. And I said, can I call you? And Katie is one of the kindest individuals on the planet. I just adore her. And she sat with me and I'm like, please explain this to me. What's going on? And so then eventually I had just recently started my podcast. So I had all the people that were in the telepathy tapes on my podcast one by one. And I was really
One more.
understanding. Yeah.
Katie's a fellow autism mom.
Katie's son Houston and Katie and her son Houston are one of the number 1 featured families in the first season of the telepathy tapes.
Okay.
So what happens then next is I have them all on my podcast and I get to know them and I just adore them. And then I'm like, I've got to meet these people. I've got to know more. So Joe and I flew to Atlanta to meet them. And it was hard to explain, but this beyond our capacity happened. And all these people got wind that we were going to be having this gathering at Libby's. And it ended up being 32 people that gathered in Libby's backyard to talk about how can we bring this message forward. So that's when I started the Presumed Competence podcast. So I have my Autism Odyssey podcast. I was doing that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, not a long time, a year. I mean, months actually at that point. I act like I've been a long time veteran. So I was doing the podcast. It felt like it forever. And then I started what's called the Presumed Competence series. We're actually recording our 4th episode in 2 days. And it's to answer everybody's questions about spelling, all of the sciencey stuff, all the really technical stuff. And it's a phenomenal podcast. It's not me, it's them. I'm just the interviewer and they are magnificent. It's like Katie Asher, Becca Kramer, who's a scientist. We have SLPs on there. It's like this all-star cast. Okay.
Oh, so wow. I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes.
It's so good. Okay. So we started doing it. So now I'm learning. I'm editing these podcasts. Like I have nothing intelligent to add to these podcasts, but I am like editing them. So I'm learning and learning and learning, and I'm getting better and better and better and better. Okay. Now
you're asking better questions.
I'm asking better questions, and I understand the reasonings behind everything now. Now, as I'm getting more and more aware, now I'm also more willing to understand the telepathy piece. But on the other end, I'm getting all these families who are like, I kind of think my son's a telepathic, but nobody will talk to me about it. And I'm like, all these moms and dads are in the same boat that I was, but I just was blessed enough to have Katie Asher call me and say, okay, this is what's going on. And not everybody has that. So I'm like, we need to take all this information, the spelling, the telepathy, and put it all together and actually make it accessible for people to understand it, ask questions and all of that.
Yeah.
So this is actually a very strange and funny story that if you had interviewed me a week earlier, I wouldn't have had an answer on, but I do today because I just got back from filming with the telepathy tapes. So I wrote a letter to Kai Dickens, who is the creator of the telepathy tapes. And it wasn't about me. It was just a letter about, I really feel the show needs to help these parents sort it all out. And I talked about the filing cabinets and there's no place to put this information and nobody will talk to us about it. Like we need to have a show that's specifically, or we need to have some, I was just thinking an episode. Could you do an episode about this?
Yeah.
And the following week, so I didn't know how to send it to Kai. So I sent it to Libby, who's also featured in the telepathy tapes. And I said, hey, do you think you could send this to Kai? What I didn't know is that her and Kai were good friends. I had no idea. So I sent it to Libby. Libby sends it to Kai. I get a message back. Kai wants to talk to you like right away. And so the following week, I spoke with them for the first time. And then the week after that, they offered me a co-hosting position with Libby to co-host a show. And it's based on what happened to me. Cause I told the story of how I was in that car that day and Joey hit number after number. And I sat back and I just said, now what? So the show is called The Telepathy Tapes. Now what? And it starts March 12th. The first episode will air on March 12th.
I know moms who believe that, but then, they have nobody to share it with. They share
Exactly.
it with me and I'm like, oh, that yes, they do have a very heightened sense of awareness. That's as far as that I would go to explain that, because I know Suleiman has also demonstrated that kind of telepathic power.
Right.
I don't even know how to describe this, but he has.
Yeah,
And I would
course.
just think that, yeah, he just has a very heightened sense of awareness. That's all about I can
That's it.
say.
I know. So it's
Huge.
so I was just interviewed because I'm going to be on season 3. Joe and I are going to be on season 3 of the telepathy tapes. So I was just interviewed for that as well. But I will say we're trying to unfold the podcast very sequentially in the way of, okay, let's first talk about the basis. Let's explain spelling. Let's explain like the science end of things. And then we have some really incredible guests coming up where we're going to be able to talk more about what is actually happening with this telepathy piece and what is influence and all of the parts that are involved with that. So yeah, it's very exciting. I didn't see this one coming.
What is that called? Just so that I add it in the show notes
So
as
it's
well.
called, so the telepathy tapes Now What is going to be on the telepathy tapes YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel for the telepathy tapes, you will see our podcast, the telepathy tapes Now What, as of March 12th, when our first episode airs. It'll be every other Thursday that a new episode will air.
Oh, wow. I'm so excited for you. So it'll be you and Joey on the podcast.
No, it's myself and Libby Ingram, who is, she's a delight. She's a SLP.
Pulling her in. So, I mean, before this podcast is out, you might as well let her know that I will be reaching out to her. I want to know more. This is so exciting. Love it.
It's very exciting.
We basically covered on a very superficial level everything about presuming competence and about telepathy, because these are, as you rightly pointed out, Betsy, they are podcast topics by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think for any mom who stumbles upon this is just about how much she can take for now. Baby steps. Like, you just this is a lot of information.
If I can add one thing, because this is important. Joe being able to put down 4 numbers is a party trick. And I call it that. And I don't, what I
trick.
promised Joe is that I was never going to turn this into a big party trick. Have I done that? Joe and I have this little joke that we do with each other when we're trying to prove it to somebody, and we'll do a little party trick, like go in the other room, think of a word or a
No way.
phrase.
You've done.
And and then he'll come back and he'll spell it with perfection. So he can do the party trick.
Yeah.
But the power of which it means is so much bigger than the party trick. It is one of my favorite ways to explain this is, as all of this was unfolding and I started to see the struggles of individuals who also have diagnosis of autism who are speaking, and the intense anxiety that is held on to by them because they're constantly trying to mask, and they're trying to be somebody that they never intended to be, and they're trying to be forced into a world that they just don't feel connected to, and it's so hard for them. It was a powerful realization as Joe has become living his best life, which he truly is right now. He still has meltdowns. We still have to deal with all kinds of
We all
brain
do.
body issues with the praxia. I mean, the praxia stuff is real. Okay. It's still very, very, very real. But the extreme joy that he's going through in his life right now is so powerful. And what we are starting to uncover about autism and how these are the wayfinders and how these are the ones we want to be following, that I used to feel that I got the short end of the stick. Like, my son is profound, my son is severe. And now I feel like I've got the front row seat. I get to witness what's about to unfold in our entire universe right now with what does this mean to humanity? Because it's so much bigger than just the autism community.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to know that we're in for quite the ride right now. And that's why it's such a motivation of mine to get families settled and comfortable in this new information, because just wait. You think this is big? It's going to get a lot bigger. It's going to get a lot bigger. Yeah.
Betsy, just the other day, not just the other day, this has been happening for about over a year. And honestly, it's what, that whole episode about Suleiman packing his bag away, that actually did start a spark in me somewhere. And I've been toying with the idea of speaking to him differently. And this has been going on for a while, so it's not like all done. And the baby talk, the very ABA inspired speech that we do with them. I've noticed that when I speak to him differently, he looks at me differently. He looks at me as if he's seen a ghost, because he can't believe that I'm actually talking to him in an age appropriate way, like how I would talk to my other kids.
That's right.
Right. And I get a different response from him then.
It's so great. And wait till you get to the point where, you have found your own way through communication, where you start realizing, because this is the thing to me is like, yeah, can I influence Joey through telepathic communication? Absolutely I can. But I don't know all the things he's telling me. Like, I can't influence everything. I can influence things like,
so much.
Hey, you know what? I would really love to go see a movie today. And he's just like, yeah, let's go see a movie. And I'm like, okay, that could be an influence because I wanted to see a movie.
Yeah.
But him using, writing poetry and telling me things about different parts of his world and the world around us and his connection with the earth and all these other things.
Well, hold on, huh? He's writing poetry as well?
Oh, he writes incredible poetry. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And apparently that's very, very common. I think a lot of the spellers have, when I was talking to Maria and Natalia about this on my Telepathy Tapes podcast interview, poetry is a very common part of their brain that is very activated. They're very poetic. And so that's really, really common. And I think about, like, when Joe wrote a haiku, for example, I didn't know what a haiku was. I didn't know how many syllables were in a haiku, because it's all about syllables. Yeah. And so as we wrote it down and I put it all together, and then he finished his haiku, I then checked it. Yep. It was 575, the actual syllables. So that's why you can say influence, but
Yeah.
that's only a small portion. And like I said, anybody can be influenced in a small portion of the words that they use or what they point to or whatever it is. So it's not that hard to differentiate. And that's part of what we want to do in the new podcast as well, is help people understand the differences.
Right. Right. Like I said, there's so much to unpack just from this episode, and I'm so grateful, Betsy, for you doing what you do, and I can't wait to actually listen to you on. You're going to be airing. I mean, you'll be on the first episode of
Yeah,
the tapes.
absolutely. It's
And,
going to be great starting March 12th. Yeah, it's going to be
oh, wow.
fantastic. Our first episode is we have a mom who I've already pre-recorded the first 4 episodes. So the first one, we have a mom who's just basically asking us questions and just what it's like to
Kind of
start
mom.
this journey. And then the second episode, we have the spellers. We talk about the spellers methods. And then we have my daughter Jessie joins us for our third episode to talk about siblings and how they grapple with the fact that their siblings are telepathic. And then we go into the fourth episode where we talk about the science. So it's going to be a great show. I'm very excited. We have some incredible big name guests coming up, so it's going to be a blast.
Exciting and happy for you. So, Betsy, any last message that you would like to tell moms who are literally on the verge of giving up? What would you, and I know what Joey wants to say, but what would you as a mom say?
Well, I have to quote Joe, and Joe specifically has said, follow your child's passion. If there's something, they'll let you know. And I think that what I have learned from Joe is that I think the biggest message I have is the whole thing with behaviors that we started the show with is to stop labeling everything as a behavior and see it as communication and understand that it is very hard to be in their bodies. And if we can help support the body in any possible way, then that's our absolute number one motivation that we have to do, is to help them feel comfortable in their body.
That's wonderful and it's powerful. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Farah. I've really loved talking with you.